Joining us on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline is Brian Christopherson from Husker 24/7. BC, what's going on, man?
How you guys doing?
BC, good morning. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you guys.
How were your holidays, BC? Anything interesting going on?
It was uneventful, but at my age, that's what you're looking for. You're striving for most days to be uneventful.
Be a little bit more relaxing than pressure tested.
Yes, and that's good. Hopefully Matt Rule's program keeps us on our toes here in 2024 and gives us a lot of intriguing things and maybe a few more W's. That'd be kind of nice.
Well, speaking of keeping us on our toes, the Huskers are hosting a few key visitors this weekend. What can you tell us about some of these guys? I know Isaiah Nayer, the wide receiver from formerly Wyoming and now Texas, has a lot of people's attention. But what do you know about where they stand with some of these guys they're trying to fill out the depth chart with?
Yeah, Nair was the name that came up yesterday, and unfortunately for him, he had that torn ACL right after he got to Texas. They were really pumped about him. Mm-hmm. Like, all those good Texas receivers like Xavier Worthy and some of those names there this year. In 22, going into fall camp, he was being mentioned alongside those guys as a starter type player who was going to contribute right away. He came out of Wyoming and had a very productive career, I should say 21. He had a 21 season that was very good for Craig Bull's team, a lot of yards per catch, and seemed like a really good get, and a lot of schools wanted him. Texas got him, but I think that injury kind of set him back. He's been building his way back up, and it just never happened for him in Austin sort of after that happened. And so he's a veteran guy who – he's looking for that next move, and Nebraska at this point is an option. We'll see what happens there. I don't know much about what he's thinking about this visit, honestly. He's one of those guys who he hasn't said a lot. He just kind of confirmed that he's going to be here. Jamal Banks is another guy, who played at Wake Forest, and he told me yesterday morning he was planning on coming this weekend. So, that's what I know from him in a direct message. So we'll see. Everything's always fluid with those situations. It can change by the hour. But he's a guy who has had a very productive last couple of years at Wake. And, they've been a good football program too. And they're bigger receivers. They're veteran guys, both the guys we've mentioned who have played a lot of college football. So, at the very least, we know what they're kind of targeting. They're targeting that, can you get me that 205, 215-pound receiver? And maybe he's been around college football for 4 years or something like that, where he can use that experience to help the other guys. And then, of course, there's Dante Dowell, the running back out of Oregon. And I think his family's fired up about coming here. I'm really watching that one closely. He got kind of caught in the logjam with the Ducks at their running back spot. But we know there's an opening here at Nebraska at that position. They need somebody to push that competition. We don't know how Gabe and Ramir are going to come back from injuries and all that. You got Emmett and Quinton there, but one more name would be huge. And Dowdell was ranked 194th by 24/7 Sports coming out of Mississippi, where he had, count them up, I think more than 4,600 yards rushing his last 2 years of down in high school football there. He had an amazing high school career. So I know he didn't do a lot for Oregon last year, but coming out of high school, he was very, very highly regarded.
Another big guy in Dante Dowdell as well. Do you think that's a body type that they're going for at running back as well? Or is that just kind of the best guy available and they kind of like what they see?
I couldn't say specifically if they're targeting that or not. I think it makes sense in this league if it's a bigger guy, but I don't get as caught up in that as some people. I've seen some backs who are 195 who can be physical, and then you've seen guys who are 215 who can't get their feet going. The wheels don't get turning and all that stuff. So I'm not as fired up about it as others, but I do think when you look at his measurables, your first thought in a passing description is like, oh yeah, that seems like it would play in the Big Ten, right? Where maybe he can be that physical back, but he'll have to show that, and we'll see if he ends up in Nebraska first off. But I do know with exchanges with his dad, this has been a conversation ongoing with Nebraska since basically he entered the portal right around December 20th. So this has been building for a couple of weeks, and this visit date has been targeted pretty early on in that process. And yesterday I was just confirming, like, you're still planning to come, right? And said, absolutely we are. So I get the sense there's a lot of vinegar for that one from their side about, seeing what Nebraska has to offer. And here's a kid who thinks he's probably a pretty good player waiting for his opportunity. So it could be, we'll see if it's a good match.
You don't happen to think, BC, that this could be a trickle-down effect of Dylan Raiola's commitment at all, seeing these three visitors on campus? Or do you just think it's just more of a case of, hey, we saw what Nebraska's program did last year. We like what's going on over there, and that's why we're taking a chance in visiting?
I would not dismiss, without saying each guy, I would not say specifically, oh, this guy's coming because of Raiola, but I would not dismiss the fact that in general, recruiting targets or portal targets are seeing what Nebraska's doing. And you see that they got Raiola, and it made such a splash that week, right? I mean, that Monday when that happened, when it was like, oh, he's going to flip. I mean, Nebraska was in the Twitter sphere or the social media sphere, whatever you want to call it, more than I've seen him during the season in a long time on that particular night when it was talking about Dylan Raiola. And there was sort of a, whether it's right or wrong or in the middle, there was the interpretation like Nebraska's going for this. They're getting out the driver, they're going to clear the water here. And I think people took notice of it, and you couldn't miss it if you are a player who is right now considering your options. Like, okay, that's a program that one, you're like, they're going for it. Two, you realize they probably got an NIL situation that's not bad, that maybe is going to be interesting to me. You see the passion that sort of surrounded when Raiola made his decision, and guys say that, man, I could be a rock star there. Like Vincent Shavers, the linebacker from Miami who signed at the end there, him and his father came down that week, and they're kind of an example of this. They were just like blown away by like how much people care about the program here and just how much it means to everybody. And so I think guys do pick up on that. And I will say this as a final answer to that question, Andrew. Jamal Banks, in his exchange yesterday, the receiver out of Wake, I asked him why, and it was just a brief thing, but he mentioned Raiola specifically in his answer. It was a short answer, but whether that's just playing to the crowd a little bit and that's the answer people like or not, he said it. And so that's interesting to me.
We're talking with Brian Christopherson, a Husker 24/7. BC, speaking of Raiola and the transfer portal, do you expect Nebraska to try and add any depth in that quarterback room, even if it maybe not a what you would call a starter caliber type guy, but do you expect them to target anybody there for some depth purposes?
I don't know if they're going to add anybody at this point. Not immediately. Now, I think you got to remember this thing could open up again after the spring, and maybe you pluck somebody there. And so maybe that's the time to see sort of how guys go through it, where you're at with those quarterbacks. Also, what you have, they've got a couple walk-ons that are kind of interesting to them. And, Rule has always said this. He said when he's asked about the competition at the position, he's like, I'm the guy who has started a walk-on at quarterback before. So the point being, they're going to give all those guys a look to see, like, yeah, maybe there is a quarterback already in that room who nobody's talking about, who could be a third or fourth guy, like something like that. And so that's kind of my sense, Ravi, is I don't know that it's going to happen right now. I don't expect it at all, actually. But like after the spring, it's one of those things I think you definitely keep a watch on.
BC, revisiting those three visitors just one more time, in terms of like as you assess the Huskers' immediate needs. Would you say experience at the wide receiver position, or would you say additions to the running back room are more important to the Huskers right now?
That's a good question. You could do a whole hour on that one, probably. I would say running back to me. I know. I think they need both. Don't get me wrong. Like, I hope they add at least one veteran receiver and a running back. And first off, with running back, if you're going to go that way, he's got to be a guy that you really think deep down can be like a 1 or 2 guy right away. Like, not one of these deals where you're pretty unsure about how it's going to go. Obviously, they're going to compete and all that, but you're hoping it's that kind of immediate impact guy. Dowell, could be an example of that. We'll see. But I just think Nebraska's got to really put a focus on making running back a great position in this offense again. And it's been okay some years, but it just hasn't been something that jumps out at you to me since Amir Abdullah. You got to go back to like Amir. I know Divino Zigbo had a great, statistical year, but I'm talking about that back who everybody on the field knows it's just special when he touches the ball. He makes 4-yard runs out of no-yard runs. He makes 10-yard runs out of 2-yard runs, that where he gets the extra and makes your O-line look good in the process, makes your quarterback look good. And so finding somebody like that, I think, is imperative. They aren't easy to find because there's always, in college football, every cycle, there's like 400 good running backs out there. Like, okay, they can get you something. And then there's 10 to 12, something like that, who are just great, who take it to another level. When you watch it, you're like, oh, there's something different about them. Can Nebraska find one of those guys pretty soon? I think it would be a huge lift to this program.
BC just being so disrespectful about the Jacquez Yant spring game. You didn't get excited about the Yant spring game? Come on, man.
I like the Jacquez Yant Northwestern game. That was kind of fun.
There we go. Yeah.
When he had a big day.
BC,
forgot about that game.
I knew there was one game that he went off in the regular season. I couldn't remember which one it was. That makes sense, though. BC, you mentioned that running back room. Am I crazy? Or I'm kind of bullish on the wide receiver room. I know they're young. I know they're inexperienced, but I kind of like a lot of those pieces. Am I nuts?
No. That's why I didn't answer receiver. I think they need help. Like, it would be nice if they he's your one receiver. He's a veteran. He's done it. I really like the guy from Wake if he ends up coming this weekend and all that. And maybe Nair's that guy too. But I do think a lot of the young pieces are pretty interesting, not just the ones we know about. Obviously, Lloyd showed us something that he can be explosive. And I think Lloyd did a lot in limited plays. Like, if you actually look at his play count, he was not like a 40 play a game guy, though they were sort of depleted there. He was more in that 18 to 20 range. So I'm kind of curious what happens as he knows more. I think he's going to be really dedicated to figuring out more and all the positions he can do. I think he can be really good. But Demetrius Bell is a guy I'm interested if he can keep putting his head down, doing the stuff behind the scenes. He did it in the fall. If he can do that in the spring, he could be a storyline there because I think from what I gathered, he's pretty impressive as a player, like between the lines and stuff he's done. And so there's some young guys, obviously Malachi, who I think is going to I think he's going to take a big leap this year. I just think he was figuring it out last season. He already loves to be physical. And he had that quote in the season where he's like, I love to take a man and just move him from his space and put him 10 yards over there. It's something like that. And I was like nodding my head to it, like, yes, so I think he's got the right mentality. So I like a lot of, like you do, that they have there. Add one guy maybe who's a veteran who really fills it out a bit, maybe two. I don't know. It's possible, I guess. And I think they could be okay. They got to have a quarterback who can throw them the ball. I think that was one of their biggest issues last year.
BC, one guy you didn't mention was Jaden Doss. That's a guy that they were super high on going into the fall last year before he got injured. I mean, is it totally out of the question that he emerges as maybe one of the, I've heard people talk really highly about Demetrius Bell. Obviously, we know Coleman and Lloyd because we saw them a lot last year. Is it possible that Jaden Doss just kind of emerges from behind the scenes and ends up being kind of that guy?
Absolutely. Jaden Doss in early August last fall, was going to play right away.
Mm-hmm.
And then he suffered that hand-arm injury. And so it sidetracked him. He works his way back. By the middle of the season, they throw him in, but they stopped him at 4 games. They wanted to keep the red shirt. I think that speaks to something about they see a lot of value in, like, we want this guy in this program a little while. And also give credit to Billy Kemp, by the way, on this one real quick, because Billy Kemp was pretty banged up, and he kept going out there and took his lumps, and he saved Jaden Doss's red shirt in a way by being able to finish out those games, even though I don't think he was 100%. So I think that's a big deal, and it's absolutely right to bring his name up. I should have mentioned him with the other guys. There's probably someone else I'm forgetting, but Jaden is that kind of player. Ja'Cory Barney, I think, is going to be really interesting out of the Miami area. You know, he's a guy who's very confident in his skills, as all those Miami guys are. When you talk to him, it's kind of fun. They're like, yeah, I'm coming in, I'm going to play. He's coming in a week or two. He's going to be on campus, and here you go. So that'll be a storyline too. They've got 5 Miami guys coming in, and some of our skill guys. They have struggled with the past staff. That's the past staff at keeping Florida guys here. They've got them here, and then they've left. Can they get those Miami guys to develop and really get a pipeline going there and make it a thing? And that's going to be something to watch too.
BC, I want to take a peek at the quarterback position one more time now, because I kind of want to think future here. If you created a timeline of events to describe the quarterback room this offseason all the way up to the first game of the season. So skip past spring, the spring game, the summer, fall camp, everything. Skip all the way to the start of next season. How do you think things shake out? Who do you think the staff adds, if any? Because you kind of already alluded to the fact that you don't feel like super confident that they are just going to add somebody else to that room. And 3, what needs to be seen in order for you to lock in a starter comfortably?
I'd be kind of surprised if they lock in a starter after the spring. First off, when we're talking timeline, I think they'll play that through the fall, knowing the way this staff operates, or just having watched them the last season. I think they're going to want to keep that competition kicking. The thing that I'd want to see the most is security with the ball. You know, like if we go back to last spring, guys, we were told what was going to happen before it happened, and we maybe didn't want to believe it. If you go the spring game, I mean, it was sloppy. They just fumbling, they fumbled the ball all over the place in that game. I think they had lost it. They put it on the rug 8 or 9 times. And the week before that spring game, they had a big scrimmage, almost as important to them as the other one that everyone sees. And Rule came out and told the press, yeah, there's good things, but we turned it over a bunch of times, just unforced stuff. And they had another practice where that happened. And so when you kind of look back on it, you're like, man, all March and April, we were told that they're just like dropping the football over there. And there was obviously hope they're going to get that corrected and stuff. But I think in the spring with those quarterbacks, even if there's some easy stuff, and there's going to be turnovers, of course, but you don't want to see just the silly giveaways. It's like, here you go. Here's a gift. To the defense, which then worked its way to Boulder, Colorado, like here's a gift to the defense. So I'm hoping from the quarterback spot that there's talk about pretty clean play for young guys, and that it's true. And then I think that the timeline is you don't make that decision until mid-August on who the starter is, because I don't think anyone's going anywhere of those 3 scholarship guys. So I don't think they're in a bind now at this point. With Chubb out the door, the Heinrich seems like he's dedicated to helping this team somehow. And the 2 other guys are just getting started. So they're not going to run away yet. So I think you could take your time with that and just keep that thing rolling. And then maybe in the summer, when that portal window is open again, you evaluate, do we need somebody, or can we maneuver this where it helps to add another guy? Or do we have that 4th QB maybe in a walk-on or something? I think that's what you got to get out of the spring.
BC, we've got about 3 minutes left here. I wanted to switch gears to basketball, if that's okay. Obviously,
huge game.
Yeah, Nebraska ball has a huge game against Indiana tonight. Start of a 5-game stretch that's really important for them. After Indiana at home tonight, they go at Wisconsin, number 21 in the country. Then they've got number 1 Purdue at home, and then they go at Iowa, at Rutgers, which is one of the toughest places to play in the country. Judging by this next stretch here, where I think you've got to get at least 2 wins to kind of keep your momentum going for Nebraska, how important is this game against Indiana tonight?
Well, I think it's big because of the ones you mentioned, of the next 3 with Indiana, Wisconsin, Purdue at least, I think Iowa's gettable the way they're going right now.
Mm-hmm.
But Indiana might be the best win chance, I think. And that sounds weird to say because, you think Indiana and all that. But they're 10-3, they're 2-0. They've got they can throw a pretty good big lineup at you that's going to test Nebraska, especially if rink mass is limited or not available. And yet, I've watched them play a couple times this year, and I've thought if Nebraska brings it on the defensive end and attacks the glass, and even if they can just make it a standoff where it's even on the boards, I think Nebraska has a good shot tonight, especially at home. Should be an energized crowd. The thing that's going to be interesting, guys, is how this Husker team deals with sort of the expectations and weight of this game, because where this team has hit some potholes this year is actually when people have kind of leaned in to watch, right? I mean, when it was that Creighton game and then, all right, get the Big Ten started against Minnesota, and they blew it in the second half. Then everybody kind of fell off. And then Nebraska rallied sort of in that week. There's still people paying attention, but I think some people are kind of like, this isn't going to go anywhere. And then Nebraska got going again in that week when nobody was really as fired up about it, and rebuilt their season. Good for them. But this is the type of game now where everybody's back on it, and they're like, come on, give me hope. And they gotta go just be that team that wins the 50-50 balls and doesn't give up, 15 offensive boards tonight, that sort of thing. And it'd be huge to get this one because the next 2 are going to be difficult, and you're working rink back. Mm-hmm. It's not an easy situation because of the mass injury. That's what's unfortunate. You wish they were just full go and rink was healthy as could be, but we'll see what he can do, if he can do anything tonight. That'd be big.
That's Brian Christopherson from Husker 24/7 BC. We appreciate your time as always. We'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Happy New Year.
Thanks, BC.